Welcome back to the Marvel Timeline Rewatch, where we cover all of the movies, one-shots, and TV shows from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This week we have Captain America Civil War, directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, starring Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, and many, many other
Yeah.
actors. The release date was May 6, 2016, and this timeline date is around May 3rd all the way to like June 24th, 2016. So
Hmm.
it actually takes place over a month,
Yeah.
literally over a month and a half almost. My name is Justin, here with my co-host Jacob. Jacob, how are you doing?
Yeah. No, doing great. Excited to be back and, get into more of our season 3 movies.
Yeah.
This one's a good one. I feel like everybody likes this movie. So
I didn't originally when I watched it
I've
in
seen it
theaters.
so many times that I don't know. I was watching it while I was doing other things for this because I've seen it like 100 times
Yeah.
easily. So,
This is one of those that I was so excited. There's a Captain America movie coming out,
hmm
and then I realized it was an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks. Yeah, it ultimately it's a good movie. The more I like watched it and dove deep into it, I like it a little bit more than I thought I didn't like it. I
hmm
like it more than Age of Ultron though. So because that's the standard
I
now
was going to
is
say that's the
do I
standard.
like it more than Age of Ultron or not?
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I definitely liked it more than Age of Ultron because I mean, what more do you want than just seeing everybody come together and then try to fight each other?
Yeah.
That's always been what's been in the back of people's minds. I feel like is like who would win in a fight? The Hulk or Iron Man? Well, we got to see a little bit of that.
Yeah.
In this movie. So
All right, so you ready for the 5 fun facts?
yeah, let's
of
do it.
Captain America: Civil War. All right, number 1, Chadwick Boseman did not audition for Black Panther. Marvel just met with him and talked to him about what he would want to do in the MCU.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. The Russos almost added the Wasp to the mix, but they decided that they had too many characters
Yeah.
already, so they gave her a bigger role for their sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, coming out a couple movies after this.
Yeah.
This one is interesting, and we'll see this in Team Thor Part 2. Both the Hulk and Nick Fury were supposed to be in this, but the Hulk would have tipped the scales too much,
Yeah.
and they didn't want Nick Fury to have to pick a side.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
The last time we saw the Hulk, he was in the Quinjet taking off, and we just
Mhm.
assumed he went to space. So until
Yeah.
like 2 days ago, I thought he always just went to space after this and was like waiting for Ragnarok. The actor that originally played Thanos before Josh Brolin, we've only seen him once so
Mhm.
far. He got recasted with Josh Brolin, but Marvel decided to give him a solid, and he is actually one of the henchmen for Crossbones at the beginning of this movie.
Okay.
Of course, his face is covered the entire time, so you can't
Right.
even tell. And then Civil War. Okay, every Marvel movie gets Oscar nominations typically.
Sure.
How many Oscar nominations do you think Civil War got?
I'll go with. I'm gonna say 5, but I think that might. I don't know. That sounds like a lot.
It's too many.
Okay. Oh, then 3.
Too many.
Oh, 0.
Correct.
Okay.
Civil War got 0 nominations for Oscars that year. They
Huh.
got completely shut out of it. Chris Evans, however, did win he won acting awards for both the Teen and Kids Choice Awards, while Downing got the People's Choice Award, or nominated for People's Choice. No, he did win for the People's Choice Award
Okay.
for acting. I guess the younger people just liked Captain America more.
Well, I think that. I don't know. As far as the movie goes, I don't know if it was like shot as well as some of the other Marvel movies have been. Like there wasn't a lot of music that
It was
really
just-
stood out.
It was overhyped. It was
Yeah, and I think this movie was more about the storyline and the action than it was
Yeah.
anything else. So, and even at the action, it wasn't like they had a lot of special effects
they
or
Civil
anything
War
crazy like that.
had to push Marvel into this season. Like
Yeah.
this was the first Phase 3 movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ant-Man was technically part of Phase 2. So they had to push that storyline, push the narrative to get to where Phase 3 was going to eventually end,
Yeah.
to get them all to come back. So
Yeah.
this did a good job at that.
Well, and this was kind of the last movie where you see the original Avengers until you get back to, Infinity War and stuff like that.
Only Infinity War.
Yeah, because now it's going to be, the one-off heroes that some were introduced here and some will come up later.
This is actually the last time that you see all of them in the same, action shot.
Yeah.
Because even in Infinity War, they're all split up.
Yeah.
You don't actually see them all together.
Until Endgame.
Even then, no Black Widow. Spoiler.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Actually, no, you don't even see, because you don't see Hulk or Thor. Age of Ultron was the last time that all of them were in the same fight scene.
Yeah.
That was so early in the series.
Wow.
It's kind of like Game of Thrones when you only see the entire Stark family in the first episode, and you never see them all together ever again.
Yeah, that's some perspective, because I hadn't thought about that until now. But yeah. Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
All right, so Captain America revolves around the conflict that arises among the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, due to differences in ideology and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, at the very beginning of the movie, there was a biological warfare weapon that Crossbones was trying to take. And Crossbones was Romlo.
Yep.
I keep wanting to say Romloff or Romloff, and every time I try to
Romanoff
spell it, and then I have to go look it up on IMDb, and it's Rumlow. So he's still alive after a building fell onto his face.
Yep.
From Captain America: Winter Soldier. So he's trying to steal a biological weapon and basically just kill the entire city of Lagos.
Well,
that wasn't the intent.
He tried to blow up Captain America by killing himself, and then
that was part of it.
Yeah. And then Wanda kind of shot him.
The biological weapon.
Oh, the biological weapon. I don't know if he was going to necessarily use it on Lagos or if he had something else planned.
Yeah, I'm sure something else was playing, because that was supposed to go to Zemo, wasn't it? Was he the buyer? Who was the buyer for that?
They never really said. I don't think it was Zemo, but because Zemo's plan kind of kicked off after that.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyways, so almost he goes to kill himself with Captain America. Wanda, as you said, sends that up, blows the building up, and now that's another event in Lagos. So that actually marks a lot of destruction by the Avengers in recent times. I had this noted. Where was that? There was New York, DC, Sokovia, Lagos. Do you know what the common denominator there is? Who was in all of those? Captain America.
Captain America, yeah.
He was there for all of them. I mean,
just saying.
Maybe I should
America's
cover the
hero.
star.
Yeah,
America's hero is destroying the world.
And to General Ross's point, it makes sense, that people view them the way they did, because they are just running around acting on their own accord to be I feel like I need to go stop this person.
Vigilantes.
And they really don't take into account to any of the destruction. They don't listen to any governing bodies. They didn't ask the government of Lagos if they could go in there and look for Crossbones. They just took it upon themselves to go and do it, which, I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. operated like that, I'm sure, but they had an oversight and they had, government backing and all that. Now they have nothing. They're just essentially a group of superheroes.
Yeah. Truthfully, and they touch up on it on this movie too, because that mom that met with Tony Stark is talking about how was it the mom still, or was it Zemo that talked about it? Was Zemo that talked about at the very end of this movie how his family was covered in rubble and ash and dust, and the Avengers just went away. They weren't there to pick everything up. They just was like, well, we saved the world, guys. Hurrah, let's leave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of what they do.
Yeah.
And you see the repercussions from this all the time, which I'm glad, because it's not just yay, the superheroes saved the day, and then it's, what about the actual city?
Well, and I think it became more apparent with the alien invasion in the first Avengers movie. Okay, yeah, they needed to step in. The military obviously was not going to be able to stop that. So that one was okay, that's fine. And then the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. falling and Hydra, that one kind of was I don't know. That was S.H.I.E.L.D. imploding on itself. The Avengers really didn't have a play in that. It was really just Captain America, Black Widow, and Falcon. But then when you start getting into Sokovia, it's well, you created this problem. and then you destroy the problem, yes, but then if you had never have created it in the first place, we wouldn't have had all this death and destruction. And then you have Lagos, where they're going after a villain, and nobody asked them to stop them. Could the military have stopped Crossbones? Probably not, but I mean, that's all
maybe.
he is. He's
I
not
mean,
a
they should be able
superhero.
to. Yeah,
He's just a
exactly.
guy in body armor.
Yeah. Well, he said he doesn't work that way anymore when he was getting electrocuted in the neck from
Right.
Black Widow. So the beginning of this movie, I never thought about it until just recently that was the Avengers. That's the new Avengers. That
it
was
is.
at the end of Winter Soldier. So
Yeah.
was it?
Although
No, Age of
Rhodey's not
Ultron.
there,
Age of Ultron.
and Vision wasn't there. So it was a small group of them, but yes.
Oh, that's fair. I forgot about Vision.
Because it was just
Rhodey.
Falcon, Wanda, Captain America, and Black Widow. And technically, Rhodey and Vision were part of the new Avengers. So,
That's fair. Okay, maybe it's not the actual
but
Avengers,
that's
but
not to
most
say
of
they
them.
all didn't have to go.
When do we
not
ever see
everybody has
Thor
to
and
go on that
Hulk
mission.
just come by?
Yeah.
Other than Age of Ultron. So the whole purpose of this movie was the Sokovia Accords
Mhm.
because of Lagos and Sokovia and all these other things. And the Sokovia Accords essentially are just to keep them in check,
Mm-hmm.
to actually put them behind the United Nations and be governed and sent when being told. You don't see the Marines and Black Ops just going somewhere wherever they want. They are
Right.
told, and that's essentially how they're going to get treated by the UN. Of course, that makes Steve a little upset because what if they don't get sent somewhere where they're needed and something bad happens?
Yeah, and I get his point with that, but it was really interesting for me looking back on it now that he took that side because he was essentially born and raised in the military,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where he got his start. He got his start taking orders from people,
Mhm.
and
And
I
how he
mean, I
gives the
guess
orders.
in the Captain America, he kind of went after Hydra on his own, but
He did
I don't know. But when you're
because
when
their
you're growing up in
government
that
wasn't
fashion,
sending them to save them. So
yeah, they didn't save them, but I don't know. I just felt for so long he has been people tell me what to do and I do it, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden he chose now to pick a stand. So
yeah. Obviously, Steve does not sign it, and he's told that if he doesn't sign it, then he's retiring.
Mhm.
And if he does anything, then he's violating the Sokovia Accords, and he could be arrested. And he knows that. All of them know that. However, they don't all sign anyway. So let's see. Those
essentially,
that
Team
won't
Iron
sign
Man
was
signed it.
yeah. Captain America and Falcon said no, I don't want to sign it. Iron Man, War Machine, Vision, and Black Widow all decide that they're going to sign it. Wanda was still on the fence and being held basically captive.
Yeah.
And being held in the Avengers facility so that she doesn't destroy more things. Okay. During all of this, Steve gets a text about Peggy dying, and that's where he finds out that Sharon Carter is actually her aunt. No, Sharon Carter
Niece.
is Peggy's niece, and
Yeah.
you're just like, duh. I guess I just kind
Yeah.
of figured
Yeah, I
Sharon
guess
Carter, Peggy Carter.
some of that is hindsight. I mean, did we know that her last name was Carter?
Or did we just assume?
And I don't think in Captain America: The Winter Soldier they ever said her name was Carter, or her last name was Carter.
Maybe it's just knowledge that we already
I think
had
it
in
was
our
just
head.
yeah.
That's fair. And they kiss later in the movie.
They do, which is
kinda
weird,
awkward, especially
but-
when he goes back in time and then stays
Right.
with Peggy. When do you tell Peggy that? And you're like, oh, by the way, I kissed your niece in the future.
I don't think it ever got brought up,
I don't think so either.
but yeah.
Because we'll talk about that in the game.
Yeah.
Do you actually tell Peggy that you're from the future? And
Right. Or do you just let her believe that you survived?
yeah.
And wouldn't that alter? Also,
Wouldn't that
this is
alter S.H.I.E.L.D.?
tangential, but yeah, wouldn't that alter Shield? Wouldn't that alter the rest of the history then, or the future? Because then, what if Captain America stayed, and then what if he were able to fight and avert some of the world's crises and stuff like this, or it changed the course of Peggy's career and
We literally saw an entire series about changing timelines. I mean, it just creates a alternate timeline.
an alternate timeline. Yeah. I don't know. That's a Loki discussion about alternate timelines and
Loki season 2?
I don't know.
They should have addressed
There's a lot
that.
to unpack there.
something should have already addressed that, and
Yeah.
it still annoys me to this day. So tensions rise. A new threat emerges in the form of the Winter Soldier Bucky Barnes, who is accused of a bombing in the United Nations conference during the signing of the Sokovia Accords. Captain America, believing in Bucky's innocence, goes against the Accords and seeks to protect his longtime friend. Iron Man, supported by a faction of Avengers, is tasked with capturing Bucky.
Well, it wasn't capture. They also had orders to shoot on sight, so that changed things a little bit.
Yeah.
And there was a point I had about. Oh, and I don't know. The Winter Soldier really wasn't a new threat. Like they knew he was out there somewhere, but they just hadn't put a lot of effort into finding him. I feel like until now, which was all part of Zemo's plan. Was that he was like, I have to make it look like he did something big, and that's going to draw the Avengers in because he knew that they would go look for him. So
Yeah. And I mean, at this point too, Bucky has learned of Steve, who Steve is
Yes.
now, that they were friends because of the museum at the end of the Winter Soldier. He's kind of come to terms with everything and is no longer the Winter Soldier.
Right.
He is a sleeper cell agent. So once Zemo finds him, steals the therapist's ID or steals the doctor's identity, kills the doctor, and pretends to be him. He basically activates the Winter Soldier again.
Yeah.
And that's a big to do.
Yeah. No, that part has always been interesting because like Bucky just goes on his own and tries to reform himself, and as soon as that switch gets flipped, it took everybody to try to stop him, and he still got away. So
yeah. So at this point, this is where Cap is basically building his own team, which his team ends up being him, Bucky, Falcon. He gets Hawkeye to go get Wanda.
Yep.
Wanda breaks out, sends Vision through the floor. So it's the 5 of them, and then they needed somebody else. So Falcon says he knows a guy and goes and gets Ant-Man, which is what we saw at the end of Ant-Man with that post scene.
Yep.
The post-credit scene of Falcon trying to find Ant-Man. So they end up going to Germany to get what were they? Were they getting the Quinjet from Germany? They were getting some kind of jet
I think
from
they
Germany.
It was a Quinjet for sure. They were trying to get to Moscow.
Yeah.
So
they're heading there. Iron Man obviously knows they're there. So his team, which consisted of Iron Man, Rhodey, War Machine, Black Widow, Vision, Spider-Man, and that was
Black Panther.
Yes, because Black Panther in this whole time is trying to also kill Bucky. Forgot about that part.
Yes, because he thinks that Bucky set off the explosion that killed his father.
Yes.
So,
and naturally, he's gonna try to go avenge it. So
yeah,
of course, he joins the Avengers. So this is where we see the epic fight scene in Germany at the airport. A lot of good parts about there were a lot of good parts about this. I mean, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. I like you have the right to remain silent. He was trying to be an authority figure. I didn't get why at the end, after he basically just took down Ant-Man and had a big to do about that, why Tony got kind of pissy with him and was like, "You're done. You're done. Don't get up. You're done." I'm like, he just helped you guys.
Yeah, I think it might have been. Well, because there's a part where he gets flung somewhere. I think after he takes down Ant-Man, and he kind of hits the ground pretty hard. Because when Tony comes up to him, he's laying on his side, and then when he rolls him over, Peter's freaking out, and thinks everybody's trying to attack him. So I think it could have just been, I don't know, Tony's still trying to protect some of his innocence, where he's like, "Hey, you've done enough. I'm not wanting to subject you to any more than this," because I think there is part of Tony that wants to be kind of that paternal figure and the protector.
It was odd to me still. I'm
he still is a kid. He's a teenager. So, because he needed help. So, I think it hit Tony how serious this was, and like people, maybe he thought people would hold punches and like not go
Oh, and they
full
didn't.
strength, and then they didn't.
Yeah.
And like Ant-Man went big and started like really destroying stuff, and then later on like Rhodey gets shot out of the sky. So I think something
Which
clicked
was
for Tony.
not Falcon's fault.
That was not Falcon's fault.
I'll die on the hill.
It
was not
wasn't. He
Falcon's
got
fault.
out of the way.
That was Vision's fault.
Yeah, Vision was distracted,
Vision was a problem.
which he shouldn't have been distracted. So
He's literally supposed to be the perfect
Yeah.
like being.
Yep.
He was distracted.
Yep.
By Wanda.
which I love how that just kind of flew under the radar of like Tony mentioned, he's like, you weren't supposed to miss, and Vision's like, yeah, I know. Like, I don't know what happened. And then it like just their relationship continues to blossom throughout the whole thing. I think that was really cool how they set that up. So
All
although
about
it
Vision and
parallelized
Tony?
Vision and Wanda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like how they were setting that up where like Vision cooked her dinner and then he ran to her when she fell down, and then like and him missing is because he was distracted about wanting to protect Wanda. So
Yeah. Everybody just
Yeah.
needs to keep it in their pants in this series.
well, if they just hadn't have decided to fight each other, I mean,
If
Rhodey
only
could still
Captain
walk.
would have signed his freaking accords.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, you got to. And what didn't help was Sharon's speech at Peggy's funeral. We didn't talk about that, but
Oh, right.
about her speech of like how her aunt always said like,
You can't back down.
yeah,
and-
like compromise where you can, but where you can't, then stand
Fight.
and don't be moved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because that's what turned. That's what
Mhm.
signed everyone's fate.
Yeah.
For that, and he was like, "Absolutely not. I'm going for this."
Yep.
Okay, so eventually the true mastermind behind the events is revealed as Helmut Zemo, who manipulates the Avengers into fighting each other to avenge his family's death in Sokovia, which is exactly what he did at the airport, basically. Captain
Mhm.
America, Iron Man, and the others must put aside their differences to uncover the truth, stop Zemo's plans, and prevent further destruction, which eventually Iron Man comes around to it and realizes what this whole purpose was. It wasn't about the Winter Soldier and Bucky, even though it was made to seem like that. He finds out that Zemo was behind the bombing.
Yeah.
And what his whole plans was. And Steve was right about this, about trying to activate more Winter Soldiers. Zemo trying to activate more Winter Soldiers. So he goes to that prison that's underwater to go talk to
raft.
the other guys. I thought it was funny. It was kind of just subtly thrown in there, but it was like Hank always said never trust the Stark, and Tony's just like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I thought that was funny, but he goes to talk to Sam about where Cap is at.
Yeah.
Makes all of his the sound go out so that they can actually talk in private, and then he lies to Ross about where Cap is at and goes flying out.
Yeah.
Black Panther follows him. I don't know how he just casually was waiting there, but he was.
He's got Wakandan technology,
That's
so
fair. That's fair. At this point, you don't understand what kind
Yes.
of technology is, though.
that is true.
So he's just waiting for. I mean, because I thought it was weird. Tony was flying one way, Black Panther is flying the other way, and then Tony just jumps out and then goes the complete opposite way, and Black Panther follows him. So I'm like, they could have went past each other or something. I don't know. It was weird. So they all end up going to Russia, to Siberia. Cap and Bucky get there first, obviously, and start looking for it. Tony gets there and basically tells them, hey, I'm on your guys' side. They find Zemo. Zemo shows them the video of Bucky killing the Winter Soldier,
Right.
killing Tony's parents. That flipped Tony. Immediately, they all start fighting, and that leads to the epic scene at the end. The whole time you're like, where did Black Panther go? Because he was sneaking around, and then he realized that Zemo's the one that sent off the bomb, not Bucky. And I'm like, so he's just gone, and then he ends up coming back. You think he's about to kill Zemo, and then he's like, no, the people are not done with you yet. I'm like, oh, well, that's big of you. You were ready to kill Bucky, but now you're like, oh, well, we'll just take you in instead.
Yeah. Well, I think he saw some of like what all that led to with everybody fighting and everything, and he was done with with people dying and everything like that. So he's like, forget it. We'll do this the right way.
Yeah.
Because he is the king. So, but no, I thought that was pretty interesting. I also thought, like, I don't know. I guess it's hard to think of it in the moment, but like, Bucky was not the same person that killed Tony's parents. Like,
Correct. And then
he
that's
was
why
brainwashed and,
I always
and
try to
everything.
separate it.
Yeah.
It's Bucky or it's the Winter Soldier. It's
Right.
never the same person. So when it's good, Bucky, it's Bucky. When it's bad, it's Winter Soldier.
Right. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I don't blame Tony for what he did, but I was just like, you went off the deep end that quick when you know that this is not
You literally
that
saw
person.
what happened when Zemo activated him.
Right. And I guess he didn't, obviously, Tony doesn't know Bucky as well as Steve does, but like, you just went through this whole thing where he's not shooting you, you're working together. And then all of a sudden, that's what set you off. I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know.
Tony got into his feelings way too quickly.
He did. And I feel like it's a lot of family trauma that led into that too, of like his father never wanting to be around him and stuff like that, which wasn't true.
And they show at the very beginning when he's talking about barf or whatever that technology was called, and how it shows you his memories, or it shows you your memories, but you can augment those memories. And so he, in his memory, he said, "I love you," and he was like, "Only if I would have said that, because that was the last time I ever saw my parents alive." So you have to include that part, obviously, so that you understand why he's so upset about it at the very end. I thought it was interesting how they left it off. Obviously, of course, Cap and Bucky had a chance to kill Iron Man. They didn't, because they have bigger moral compass there. But Tony has to get the last laugh in there and start taunting Cap about how you don't deserve that shield. My father made that shield. And then Cap's like, well, fine, here you go. And then just walked away.
Right.
Which is the last time you actually see Cap hold the shield until Endgame.
Yeah.
And that's the last time you ever see Cap hold the shield.
Yeah.
What did you like about the movie?
I mean, the movie was good. I see why it's a fan favorite. Like I said, I think I've watched it too many times. It's lost its wow factor to me. But I still thought it was good. I love how it kept you like guessing like what was going to happen, especially the first time you watch it. You don't really know what Zemo's plan is until the very end. And even when you think you know it, he switches it because he's like, I shot all the super soldiers. Like, they're no more. This is why I really wanted to bring you in. And honestly, from a villain perspective, that's a great idea. Like, take them out from the inside. Yeah. Like, make them fight with each other.
And they last. This lasts for a long. This lasts all the way to Infinity War.
I would argue they still don't recover in Infinity War. Like, they all come together to fight, but do you really think all the scores are settled?
I think once Infinity War happens, Tony is like, all right, I have to put my differences aside.
Sure.
So he calls Steve.
Yeah.
And then they actually don't ever see each other until Endgame.
Yeah.
When he finally decide, I guess all the way through Endgame, that score's still not settled until Steve is like, all right, we have to go see Tony.
Yeah.
So Tony needed Steve in Infinity War, and then Steve needed Tony in Endgame, and then I think it finally kind of settles.
I think it was settled when Tony made the ultimate sacrifice, because I feel like that was his whole trope, is that Captain America always called him selfish. You know, you're only in it for yourself. You're only in it for personal gains. And then Tony makes the ultimate sacrifice, and Cap's like, okay, whatever. But then Cap just leaves and goes back in time. So,
yeah, I would even see back in time when they went to go get the stones, there was a little bit of animosity still there.
Yeah. Especially when they went to the army base and stuff like that. Yeah.
Like, this was here the whole time, and
Mm-hmm.
That animosity between the two of them has always been there, but never this big.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a good movie.
It was a great movie. Yeah, in the comic books, I was reading some of the Civil War series in the comics is a lot, but
Well, there's a lot of
some of
heroes in
that,
that.
yeah, and it is the entire MCU of like debating what they should or should not do, and it's, you know, should they register, should they not register, all this, um, going along with this, Agents of Shield, like I've always talked about, runs right underneath it. They do a really cool thing with the Sokovia Accords idea and everything like that, because at that point, the Inhumans are a thing, and the Shield is trying to recruit them or identify them, and it's a big debate amongst a whole season of that show about whether they should sign the Accord, should they not? Like, by creating this registry, are you like segregating people again? Are you, like enslaving them, and so to speak, because now you know where
Yeah.
they're at, like what they can do, all this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it runs right underneath it, and I thought they did a really great job with that. But that piece focuses more on the Accords more so than this movie did, because at the end of it, it didn't really matter who signed it or not. Like, they didn't do anything about it. So, and they still hunt down Black Widow, as we'll see in her movie.
Yeah, we
Even
didn't
though
talk
she
about
signed
that.
it.
Black Widow.
So
Well, Black Widow signed it, but then turned around in the battle at
yes,
the airport and shot at Black Panther to
Yep.
let Steve and Bucky get away.
Yeah.
So she violated the Sokovia Accords by.
Did she really?
I mean, you shot at the king of Wakanda. You helped the bad guys get away
Yeah.
because at this point Steve and Bucky are bad guys.
Yeah.
Well, Bucky was always a bad guy.
I'd love to figure out how General Ross got in charge of this, because like
Well,
after his
Secretary
whole
Ross.
or Secretary Ross, yeah, after his whole debacle with the Hulk and like all the experiments that gone wrong, it's like, who thought giving this guy more power would be a
Well,
good
not to
idea?
get into politics, that happens all the time.
I know it happens
General
all the
Ross
time,
turns into
but
the Secretary of Defense. Secretary of Defense is now in charge of stuff like this. But
Yeah.
how did he become the guy at the UN to enforce the Sokovia Accords?
right. And then in Black Widow is the one that's hunting her down. Like, why aren't you hunting down Steve? Why aren't you hunting down? But he is there personally hunting down Black Widow.
I have a random thought. No, never mind. I'll wait till Black Panther
Okay.
till Black Panther movie.
But I think I know where you're going with that. But yeah. So I think you'd ask what my favorite part was. Favorite part, I think, was I mean, it had to have been the airport battle. Like, that's kind of
That's the
the
big scene.
quintessential piece of the movie. And I liked it for the little quips that they got in. Like, I think when Sam and, well, here's another thing. Sam and Bucky pairing up together during that whole thing set them up
It's
for
the start of
Falcon and
their
the Winter
series.
Soldier.
Yep.
Exactly.
I had that noted too.
Yeah, I thought that was like I think they were already thinking to doing something like that.
Well,
which
you could
is
see
why.
that all through the movie with that scene,
Mm-hmm.
with them in the car.
Yes.
Where
Where he's like, "Can you move your seat up?"
yeah,
And
and he's like, no.
Yeah.
And then they're just like smiling at Steve,
Mhm.
and Steve's just like, shut up.
Yeah. Because it's like they're mutual friends of Steve, but they're
Yeah.
both really good friends with Steve. And then when Steve leaves, it's like, well, I guess we're friends. Like,
Yeah,
um,
they end up becoming besties.
but yeah, so it's like when Spider-Man is fighting them, and Sam's like, everybody has to have a gimmick. And I'm like, well, you kind of do, Birdman.
You literally,
like,
yeah, you
I
literally
was
have a
like,
gimmick.
I was like, you have a gimmick. So yeah, I thought those were funny. And then like the whole time, like Spider-Man is still that young kid that's like amazed at all of this. He's like, oh, that's cool. You got a robotic arm. And the Winter Soldier, and like Bucky's
So-
like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, he just throws him. So yeah,
Yeah, the airport scene is pretty good. If I had to put my favorite scene on there,
I mean, it's hard because there's not that much. It's a lot of like,
it's a lot
Talk
of
and build up.
talking. Yeah,
yeah,
if I wanted to choose something else other than that scene, I would probably have to say that it was the final scene at the end between the three of them.
yeah,
Because you don't realize where that's going to end up going.
right,
If you don't know what's already going to happen, obviously. So it
Yeah.
was an interesting fight scene. There was definitely parts where it looked like Iron Man was going to kill Bucky, and then it looked like Cap was about to kill Iron Man. So it was just like, oh my god,
yeah. And in the back of your mind, you're like, are they actually gonna be able to do it? Like, are they actually going to be able
Can they
to
finish?
kill somebody?
I think Tony could have killed Bucky.
Yeah.
But I do not think Cap was going to kill Iron Man.
I don't.
He just
Yeah.
had to disable him, which is exactly what he did.
Yeah.
All right, and we're at that point where Jacob has to tell me, where was Stan Lee in this movie?
Yes. Stan Lee came at the very end of this movie
Yes.
as I think it was FedEx
Yes.
delivery man, because he
Yeah.
called Tony Stark Tony Stank.
Tony
and
Stank.
Rhodey said he's never going to live that down.
Absolutely
Although I
not.
was thinking about that, I don't think he ever mentions it again. So it was kind of like
They do
they do
later.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
There's a
but
Tony Stank somewhere later on.
I think there has to be, because that was too funny to let go. Like,
I mean, we'll have to obviously
yeah,
watch out for it, but I'm pretty sure Tony Stank comes back.
but yeah,
But this goes back into the whole, is Stanley an Eternal? Because in Guardians 2, Guardians 2,
yeah.
he's talking about being a FedEx delivery driver. And does Guardians 2 actually happen
Oh,
after
that's right.
this, or
Yeah.
does it happen before this?
Well, and they are out in space. So space that where they're at could operate under a different time, like what we call time and
Yeah.
what they call time. So, oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I'm hoping it all gets explained at some point, but they might just
He
keep.
could
up
have
the
just been a
enigma.
FedEx driver
Could have just been
another
a FedEx
time.
driver.
But I think that was an Easter egg for this one.
Yeah, I bet it was.
So,
yeah,
interesting. I thought it was cool. Let's talk about Team Thor.
yes.
Team Thor had 2 shorts. There's Team Thor Part 1 and Team Thor Part 2. And then, in fact, there's actually also a Team Daryl, but that comes up later after the events of Ragnarok. So, Team Thor, both Parts 1 and Part 2 were directed by Taika Waititi. Correct? I think I said that right.
Okay.
For the first time ever. Starring Chris Hemsworth, Daley Pearson, and Mark Ruffalo.
Yes.
The release date for Part 1 was August 28th, 2016. This came... It says the timeline is September 2016, but I'm going to just... There's references in Part 2 to Civil War, like the actual movie of Civil War, so I'm going to just say screw the timeline date on this one.
Yeah.
So, Part 1, like I said, this is during Civil War. Thor moved to Australia to live with a normal human, Daryl.
Yep.
Daryl helps him write emails to both Cap and Iron Man to try to work it out, because they're famously fighting at the moment.
Yep.
He's got a whole vision board about the Infinity Stones, which is actually the first time you actually they talk about the Infinity Stones and all of them, but they don't actually like mention them all, like on explaining what they all are. But he has the like strings drawn everywhere and talks about Loki's actually at the center of the vision board because he's basically gone after almost all of them at this point. He was wondering who the Purple Man in the floating chair is.
Well, and I think that's
has a
important.
magic glove and doesn't like standing up.
Because, like, the last time you see Thor is in Age of Ultron when he has that vision, because he goes into the water, has that vision about the future, and he sees all the Infinity Stones. He sees Thanos with the glove. And although they make light of it here, I think he's still trying to put all those pieces together. And, like, he knows something big is coming. And I think that's, like I said, this is all in jest, these two things are. But, like, some of it has a little bit serious undertones, because Thor does know something is coming, which is why he wanted to make Vision, which is why he kind of needs everybody on the same page, because he knows it's going to be bad when it gets here.
Yeah. Also on the vision board, he says, what is Fury up to? And is Fury actually named Fury, or is it Furry?
Ah, okay.
Agent Furry.
Yeah.
And then Bruce Banner visits Thor?
Yeah, that one didn't make sense.
Well, I thought Bruce was in space at this point.
Well, see,
we always assume that Bruce goes to space, and that's what he ends up on that planet for Ragnarok.
And this is what we couldn't figure out at the end of Age of Ultron, because he flies off in that Quinjet, but then towards the end of the movie, or maybe it was even in a post-credit scene, I think Fury tells Natasha that they found the Quinjet. They just did not find...
In the ocean.
Yeah, but they did not find Banner or the Hulk. So then, because I know we were talking about that too, like what happened? Did he just shoot out into space?
But also the Quinjet is in Ragnarok.
Yeah. I don't know.
This is why we do this podcast, because there's some holes here I don't understand.
Yeah, because I think after Age of Ultron, we had hypothesized he just got flung into space, but then if the Quinjet is in Ragnarok,
and Nick says that they found the Quinjet in Age of Ultron, but no Bruce. But now Tony's calling Bruce during this one shot, trying to get Hulk to join the fight on Tony's side. And then Thor's like, "Oh, does he want me to?" And like, send a Raven. I don't have a phone, and send a Raven to invite me. But Tony doesn't want to talk to Thor, and Thor's really upset about it.
And then in Ragnarok, like, there's this whole thing about how the Hulk is not letting Bruce come back out. Yeah. So then I had just assumed after Age of Ultron to Ragnarok, he had just stayed the Hulk.
Always the Hulk.
But then now he's Bruce again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get it.
I'm so confused.
Maybe these one shots weren't meant to be. I don't know.
But they came out in like other movies. Let me see if I can go find that back.
I don't know, because that's a big inaccuracy to have.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not going to explain what happened to the Hulk or Bruce Banner during that time frame.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Because if Tony knows where Bruce is or can call Bruce, then you know Bruce has made contact with Tony post Age of Ultron.
So Team Thor came out with Captain America Civil War. Team Thor Part 2 came out with Doctor Strange. Like it's the one shot that's attached to those movies at the end.
Got it.
I don't either way. I still don't get it, because those are supposed to help you understand
like kind
the
of
timeline.
fill in the gaps. Yeah.
So let's talk about Part 2.
Yeah.
The release date was in February 14th, 2017. This starts with Thor reading to children, and behind him is the board of Thor's Avengers.
Yes.
He's explaining what the Avengers are and why they're fighting. Daryl, this episode is more about Daryl telling his side of the things.
Yes.
And talks about how Thor destroys the stuff. Talks about in centuries, like, oh, I'll do that next century, or oh, that was a century ago. Thor tries to pay with Asgardian money, and Daryl tells him that it's worthless and he needs to get a job. So Thor takes that as in, I got to go get a servant. Instead of going to get a job to pay my bills, I'm going to get a servant to do all my things, get a job, and pay my bills.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daryl's basically like, you need to get a job that's not saving the planet.
Yeah.
And yeah, Thor explains to the kids about Civil War, what's going on, and has a servant to pay all of his bills. I mean, that's it. There's less confusing things in this one. I thought part 1 was better because it brings up the question of what is up with Bruce.
Yeah.
I still want to know what's up with Bruce.
Well, and two, in the same regard, like, what's up with Thor and Jane Foster? Like,
yeah, because during this whole time they're supposed to be together or not together.
And we made reference to that in Age of Ultron because Thor and Tony are talking, and Thor's like, "Oh, where's Pepper?" And Tony's like, "Oh, she couldn't make it." Where you kind of know that Tony and Pepper are on again, off again right now. And then Tony kind of flips it back on Thor. He's like, "Oh, well, how's Jane?" And Thor's like, "Oh, she's good." When you kind of know, when you kind of know that
only after seeing Love and Thunder,
exactly, that he and Jane may not be together at that point.
Yeah.
So now I think this kind of solidifies that they're not together. So
I don't know.
Interesting.
So it's interesting stuff here.
Yeah.
All right. That wraps it up.
Yeah.
All right. Next week we got Black Widow, which takes place literally right now, following the events of the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So be sure to follow us on social media at Timeline Rewatch, and like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get this podcast. Share it with a friend if you like it, or you think they like the Marvel Universe. Be sure to share it. 5 stars, maybe. Give us a good review. We still have 0 reviews. We've been doing this for almost a year, and we have 0 reviews. Oh. Somebody would just write us a nice review. We'll read it on air.
Well, and we'd love to hear. I say this a lot. Well, we'd love to hear other people's perspectives too.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's things we missed. I'm sure there's little insights we didn't pick up on, or somebody has a completely different theory we haven't thought about.
Yeah.
But it would be cool to discuss those. So.
And you can discuss that at timelinerewatch@gmail.com or hit us up on social media.
Yeah.
It's that easy, guys. But until next week, have a good one.